Whoa, that's bright. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Mike Essel. I'm the Dean of the Cooper Union School of Art, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our historic Great Hall. Many thanks to our friends and neighbors, the Strand Bookstore, for partnering with us this evening. We are so pleased to be hosting free public programming like this live and in person, and to be able to bring it to many online via live stream. If you're joining us for the first time, the Cooper Union is among the nation's leading colleges for students pursuing degrees in architecture, art, and engineering. And from Cooper's founding more than 160 years ago, this great hall has been a New York City destination for the public to engage with inspiring and creative voices like the ones you'll hear this evening. Our conversation tonight also follows in a long-standing association of the Cooper Union with visionary, influential design. Generations of graphic designers, type designers, and illustrators got their start here, from Milton Glaser to Emily Oberman. Cooper is the place for exploring why design matters, how it compels and surprises us, how it deepens the ways we think and communicate, and how it tells stories and creates meanings in our lives. We even have an archive dedicated to it, the Herb Llewellyn Study Center. That brings me to the reason we're here this evening and to our guests. I'm so excited to introduce them. Debbie Millman is the designer, author, educator, curator, and host of the acclaimed podcast Design Matters, which has garnered a Cooper Hewitt National Design Award and 6 Webby nominations. She was named one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company and one of the most influential designers working today by Graphic Design USA. She is also President Emeritus of the AIGA, one of 6 women to hold the position in the organization's 100-plus year history. Debbie started Design Matters back in 2005, and since then has recorded nearly 500 episodes, continuously making it both one of the first and longest-running podcasts in the world, and the first ever about design. I have known Debbie for many years, and I'm so thrilled to welcome her here to Cooper. In fact, I was once a guest on Design Matters for an episode on bad boys. I will let you infer from that what you will. Her upcoming book is Why Design Matters: Conversations with the World's Most Creative People, which features texts from nearly 60 of her interviews with the world's most gifted creative minds and intellectuals, including several Cooper graduates. Joining Debbie in conversation are Maira and Alex Kalman. Maira is an award-winning artist and designer. She has written and illustrated over 30 books for adults and children and has been a frequent contributor to the New York Times and the New Yorker. Her watch and clock designs appear under the M&Co label, the design studio created by her late husband, Tibor Kalman. Alex Kalman is a curator, designer, editor, journalist, and filmmaker. He is the creator of Museum and What Studio. His exhibitions have been shown at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the Museum of Modern Art. Please join me in welcoming Debbie Millman, Maira and Alex Kalman, and a reminder that Strand is taking pre-orders tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Doesn't it feel wonderful to be around people again?
No.
No. Before we get started, Mike already mentioned Tibor Kalman, and I just thought that there was some wonderful symmetry about the fact that I'm here tonight, but I was also here in 1998 when Stephen Heller interviewed Tibor on this very stage. So
I was here and I left early.
I
think I walked out in a huff. I was a little bored. Yeah. I'd heard it before. No.
One of the things that I love to do at the top of my interviews is surprise my guests with some tidbit of information that I found about them and hope to sort of break the ice and get them to smile. But Maira and Alex and I are actually friends, and so I wanted to turn the tables a little bit, and so I asked them if they would bring a photo from Alex's early childhood to some early relic from their early days as a family. And so I think we're going to show something on the screen here.
Yeah, Maira was always taking photos of the family, and it was rare that there was a photo of the two of us, but we found one. So it's Maira in the white hat, and me in the black hat.
In our house upstate in Russia. And, we like to dress up. That was what we did a lot in the family. So,
Which is which?
well, I'm the elder, the mentor. And, I look a lot like Tolstoy in this photo. And Alex looks a lot like Chekhov in this photo.
You look the same, too.
Yeah.
You haven't aged since that
Haven't changed at
photo.
all. Right.
Well, thank you for sharing this. It's I'm sure you had to look really hard to find it. So we have a really unusual Design Matters episode tonight because in addition to talking and asking lots of questions, what we're going to be talking about is peppered with lots of really wonderful images. And so it's going to be a bit of a show and tell. But I'm going to start first with just some history, just some background questions, and then we'll move into some visuals as well. So this is a question for both of you. I understand that with Thanksgiving around the corner, something special happens in your lives. You begin to play music on a continual loop. From what I understand, it's 24/7. And I understand the soundtrack is Charlie Brown's Christmas.
It's enhanced interrogation techniques.
So tell us about
That's
that.
amazing that you know that. But somehow that's the kickoff date for the Christmas extravaganza. There's no Christmas in our lives, really, except for Charlie Brown Christmas. It's amazing music, so we're happy listening.
You've said that though you love Charlie Brown, the music transcends any kind of identification with the comic. And what it does provide you with is contentment, peace of mind, and pleasure. And I thought, what is it about that music? Because I feel the same way. Vince Guaraldi's Charlie Brown's Christmas. Yes, let's hear it. There's something so incredibly special about that music. It almost feels like it should be the soundtrack to the planet. So what is it about
This planet.
Of this planet, yes.
What is it? And it's just
It's good music.
It's great music. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And of course, it's connected to the genius of Charles Schultz. So it's a beautiful combination.
Alex, you said that everyone grows up with a language in their home. Ours was looking. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what you mean by that. Language as looking.
I said that?
You did.
Sounds good.
I'm starting to have footnotes in my questions because the amount of times I've heard, did I really say that? I'm like, yes, you did. It's right here.
Yeah, I don't feel that English is my first language, and maybe that's my excuse for, not having the vocabulary that Maira does. But in our house, it was always about curiosity, and it was always about a kind of engagement with the world around you and a desire to see and meet and be, and that you don't have to just look where you're intended to look, that you can really look around every corner and behind every door, and that's where the interesting things are. So looking is just observing and thinking and then taking those observations and turning them into some form of story or some form of narrative for people is just kind of what the home was from day one.
I read that, Maira, you described playing with Alex and your daughter Lulu as complete, delightful chaos, and you described it this way. We were very free about changing our environment for our imagination. The house became the setting for forts, that then became forests, and that then transformed into mazes of string. So Alex, what was that like for you to be that free with creativity for pretty much your entire childhood?
I don't think that you know there are other ways. You don't realize how special it is when you're a child until you go over to your friend's house for a sleepover and you realize how unbelievably dull it is and how you want to leave, immediately and rush back to your own house because it's so much fun. But it was that. It was just chaos and creativity all the time, and not in a kind of forced way, but just this is the way it is.
Did you know from a young age that you also wanted to be an artist and a designer?
I still don't know if that's what I want to be, but
You're young.
I have no choice.
Why don't you have any
I'm joking.
choice? Why don't
No,
you have
I'm
any
jo-
choice? Okay. But
because I'm a Frankenstein. So, no, I think I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew that I was kind of encouraged to just pursue what was interesting to me. And I was given that model from a very young age by example, by observing Maira and Tibor and the way that they lived and the way that they loved and the way that they worked and how to kind of pursue what was meaningful and interesting to them. So again, that was just what seemed natural. And trying to stay as true to myself as possible and kind of always focus on that as the years go on. And I don't know what I'll be doing in 10 years, but hopefully it will be interesting to me and maybe meaningful to others.
you went to Bard College. What did you study there?
I studied film. I went to Bard because I didn't want to go to college. And some of Myra's friends said, if you don't want to go to college, go to Bard.
Why?
And I think they were right.
What was it about that type of experience that they felt would be meaningful?
It was a really kind of open approach to what learning means and to how to structure your education. And it really wasn't about teaching in the traditional sense. It was more about kind of encouraging doing and through doing learning. And that's always what's felt natural to me.
You're now a creative director, a curator, you're an inventor. You own What Studio, which is a New York-based gallery devoted to curiosity, humanism, humor, optimism, and originality. And you're also the founder of Museum, as Mike mentioned, a former freight elevator shaft on Cortlandt Alley in Tribeca that you transformed into a 36-square-foot exhibition space, which is actually 1/18,000th the size of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So I think we have some photos, and I'd love to talk with you about what motivated you to create this space, how you curate the types of shows that you have, and then ultimately a show that you collaborated on together.
Sure. It is 1/18,000th of the size. I didn't know that, but I believe that. But it's potent. Can we put an image up?
There we go.
Okay, so here's Museum. I think about it like an espresso compared to a big gulp. It's small, but it's strong. Or a big dog, or I think of it as a small dog that believes it's big. As I was saying, I've always been interested in nonfiction storytelling. I've always been interested in observing and collecting ideas. I grew up in a household where we had onion rings on the wall, which were not to be eaten, but which were to be admired. So this way of looking at the vernacular and finding it meaningful and entertaining has always been a part of it. And I was doing a lot of work in the digital space, and I was really getting tired of working in the digital space. And I thought, why not commit the creative energy that's being brought into the digital space in the physical space? And I've always loved museums, so I thought, open a museum and see whether people show up. So some friends of mine and I imagined this space that would be kind of a random place that you would discover and enter. And the defunct freight elevator in the back of the building where I have my studio became available, and it was one of those serendipitous things. So we opened it, and there it is, and it's open still, and everybody's invited to go and see it. And what we show is what we now call object journalism. So it's objects from around the world that reveal humanity to us, that reveal a kind of a sense of current events or social issues, a way of looking at what's going on in the world and ourselves through objects.
How do you choose the kinds of objects you want to show?
We think about what's going on, and we think about what are the objects that reveal that. It's really simple.
Really? That doesn't sound that simple. It sounds like really very specific, curated decision making.
I mean, it is that too, but the premise of it is very simple. It's kind of I find that the more seemingly mundane the object and the more kind of revealing it is, the more valuable and interesting it is to us. You know, we're not looking at objects of design as a kind of endorsement of good design, and we're not looking at art, and we're not looking at history. We're looking at kind of, you know, contemporary archaeology, or just objects that reveal these stories. So we have exhibitions. These are, oh, thank you, Mother.
Look, just look.
And you know, I know that we really want to hear you say something, and that I'm taking up most of the air, but
No,
I'll
there's plenty
speed
of time,
through
and I
this.
have lots of questions for Maira. Don't worry.
These are items from the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, a collection of tools used by protesters. There's an exhibition of last meal receipts that were collected from individuals' executions
How did you
across
get
the
these,
country.
Alex? How did you find the receipts for prisoners' last meals?
Well, I work with a team of people that are really smart and really good at research and really good at kind of finding little corners of the world. And you know, I think that I curate more like an editor at a magazine, where we're thinking again, what are these relevant stories, and how do we tell a story through objects? So we research, and we write emails, and we make phone calls, and sometimes people come to us. These are items from two different collections. One is signs from the youth-led climate march, the I'm Scared to Grow Up, and the other are these seemingly innocuous We Buy Houses signs that are kind of a form of modern redlining, which, you know, I'm not going to really dive into right now. And then, you know, on a little bit of a lighter note, we have world leader used tissues. So
How
it's a
did you
mix.
get
There's a real
those?
mix.
How did you find those? I've been dying to know.
Those, as it says in the very fine print, are facsimiles,
Okay.
which is the museum speak for not real.
Okay. Fair enough.
But we're very upfront about what's authentic and what's not.
Another one of the stories that you shared through the museum is the story of Sarah Berman. Sarah Berman is Maira's mother, your grandmother, and after 38 years of marriage, Sarah left her husband. They were living in Tel Aviv at the time, and also left behind all of her possessions, with the exception of what she could fit in one suitcase. And after beginning a new life here in Manhattan, she decided to wear only white. Before I ask you about the exhibit, did she ever explain to you why she chose white as the only color she wanted to wear?
No, and we never asked. And the nice thing about a family is how little you can communicate, and it feels natural. So maybe I would ask a stranger, "Oh, look, you're only wearing polka dots all the time." But with her, it was a natural extension of who she was, and we just and I always said it was really easy to go shopping with her, and we narrowed the field. So it just was.
You decided to create an exhibit of her closet. Why?
Well, I'm going to take credit for that. When she died, we were very close to her, and she was extraordinary and a very interesting person. And her closet was incredibly, she lived in a small studio apartment, had left a big apartment with a lot of things, and lived very, very sparsely in this studio apartment. And her closet was immaculate and ironed and starched, and it was perfect. So when she died, and afterwards we were standing, I mean, not with her, she wasn't with us in the closet, but after she died, we stood in the closet, and I said, well, this is a museum. So we put everything away in storage for 10 years. We said, we'll just save everything, all the bras and the underpants, and which are essential to a museum exhibit. And then one day, when Alex had his museum, we were talking about something. I don't know what we were talking about, and I don't know why we were talking.
Because I took over the space next door as the museum annex and
right,
trying to kind of be a proper museum,
right.
which we have an image of. So this was the annex that we took over next door to museum.
And you see that and you immediately think, now that could be a museum.
Of course. I mean
a no-brainer.
Don't we all see that?
You did.
So then we opened Sarah Berman's closet as the first exhibition at Museum 2. So this is a recreation of her closet.
So this is a pretty exact, with a little bit of adjusting for the space. And, it's a dirty, gritty alley, and there's a plexiglass cover, so it's open 24/7. It's there 24/7 with a light on, and you just encounter it and Alex made a. Well, what is it that you could call in? What was the thing that you could do, or is that something else, or you couldn't call in?
No, you could. Yeah, there was a 1-800 number, so anybody that was passing, you can go there 24/7 and call a phone number and listen to, if you chose to, the story of why this is here.
And I had a job.
You did have a job, but I don't know if that's the next slide.
Oh, okay.
It might be.
It might be.
No,
I know.
but this is a
so this is a
close-up.
close-up of, and this is all her clothing and all of the way she had her closet, which I'm sure everybody here does too.
And she ironed her bras and her underwear.
Yeah.
Now I
As we
understand.
all do.
As we all. Well, no, you do. But I read that you would have like ironing parties where you would iron.
Craziest parties in New York.
All the rage.
So I sort of feel similarly to laundry. Like I love doing laundry. There's something very soulful about it. I think you love ironing.
Yeah, I do. Well, it comes from the women from Belarus, from the taking care of everything, and the women working endlessly and washing and starching in the river, and then it was endless beast labor, but it carried through. And the sense of having everything that you have beautifully taken care of, and all of that. I mean, it's just it's a very strong part of how I look at the world around me.
Are you very particular with your ironing style?
Well, I have thoughts about it. Yes, I do. But I have thoughts about everything. I'm very particular about everything, and so it's just another. We can talk about starch later on.
Okay.
Anybody who wants to talk about starch can come over later.
I would love to. What made you think that her closet should be preserved as a work of art in a museum?
Growing up, we appreciated it like it was a masterpiece of art, so it just was clear to us that this is art. And in terms of being at museum, it was one of those things that it was the mundane and the elemental that actually revealed a very large story, and a story about the meaning of life, and a story about reclaiming your own time and your own identity, and of trying to create order in what is otherwise a chaotic thing known as life, of making your own rules, of doing the best that you can. And so it, in a really, beside being visually striking, in a very honest and lyrical way, communicated these really kind of profound ideas. And it fit in the annex. It was the perfect size.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. So
Talk about serendipity.
that's right.
It went from the museum to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. A little bit.
There's me. That's my job. I was the street sweeper.
Yeah.
I was the sweeper of the alley. A thankless job if there ever was one, but I love doing it.
Well, while we're on this slide, I think it's also really interesting to point out that the museum also has a cafe. You serve coffee.
You can't call yourself a museum if you don't have a cafe.
And I believe that there's also a gift shop.
Same logic.
Tell us about those inventions as part of your...
The idea is that if you follow certain rules, you're allowed to break others. And so if we can kind of follow these traditional aspects of what do you believe a museum must have, then you can play with everything else. So in my mind, if you don't have the ability to get an espresso or to buy the catalog, it's hard to call yourself a museum. I don't think that's totally true at the same time, and there's many wonderful places that are museums that don't have espressos and catalogs, but we just really try to do the best we can.
How did you feel
I
about
don't know what's funny about that. I hear some laughter.
How did you feel about your janitorial duties?
I was underpaid. No, I love doing it.
You signed an agreement saying that we wouldn't talk about that publicly.
Now I clean my block because I just can't believe that there's any, I can't believe the existence of garbage. It makes me crazy. So I go with a grabber and a bucket.
Wow.
Go around my neighborhood. I haven't done it I got a little bit annoyed. I got annoyed, like, why should I be doing this? But I want to do it, so yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, Maira.
Citizen brigade of cleaning, that's me.
Did the people in your neighborhood know that it's you doing this? Like,
nobody sees you. You're just another kind of sad person wandering around collecting garbage. And I think maybe of all the times I've gone out, maybe 2 people have said, well, that's a nice thing you're doing. But everybody else is just, oh, lady, cleaning lady. Keep on doing it.
That says a whole lot about our culture, doesn't it?
I think that's in general, right.
Let's see some more photos. So the show moved to the Met.
Naturally, from the alley to the Met.
How did that happen?
It was...
Like the Met just came by one day and like, that's a cool idea. Let's put this in a museum.
Yes.
Awesome.
A wonderful curator.
Yeah, a really wonderful curator named Amelia Peck from the American Wing, who is a part of the period rooms, came down to visit museum and saw Sarah Berman's closet, which I then presented as our version of a period room that you might have Queen Anne's bedroom, but we have Sarah Berman's closet. And she got to thinking, and she thought this is a really interesting installation to expand the narratives that we're telling in the American Wing, and narratives of immigration, and also of humble spaces, and not kind of austere spaces that are decorated in Tiffany. That's not really obviously the American story. And so we got to work navigating the many people and many months that it takes to work in an institution like that, and then it showed up at the Met.
How beautiful.
And it was adjacent to, and that was Amelia's idea, it was adjacent to the closet of the richest woman in America 100 years prior. So Sarah came to New York in 1982, right? And in 1882, a Huntington, one of the Huntingtons, Huntington, Worsham.
The name to remember is Berman, not Huntington.
right. So the most ornate, incredible closet of the wealthiest woman in the country, next to this humble experience of an immigrant, of a divorced woman of no means. So it was an incredible juxtaposition and worked really well.
I'm going to ask if the photos can be kept up because I have a bunch more questions and I want to refer to them. Thank you.
And also the other interesting thing was that Worsham became the richest woman and got that ornate closet because she married into wealth. And so it was this narrative of marrying a man and suddenly having everything that you wanted. And Sarah's story was about leaving a man and not needing everything that he could provide and having her own independent life.
That she wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah. So talk about the light pull, because that in some ways I feel makes the whole thing for me.
That's the family light pull. Everybody has that pull in their closets.
But why this little red ball? What is it made of?
Do you not have a pom-pom?
Pom-pom. It's a pom-pom.
In your closet?
Be still my beating heart.
You have a choice. You can have a tassel or you can have a pom-pom. That's it.
Okay.
Otherwise
no
we can't
light.
talk. Right, no light.
I'm not joking. There is a pom-pom in my handbag backstage. Okay. This is a moment where I wish I was Aretha Franklin and brought my handbag on stage with me, as she always did, which I love, because she always got paid in cash. She put it in her handbag. I didn't bring it on, but I'm going to show you something later that I think will prove that I'm not fibbing, but I'll wait to reveal it till later.
Are you getting paid in pom-poms?
Kinda.
Not even. And it was at the museum for 9 months. A very good number of people came to see it. I don't think they only came to the museum to see that. They may have come to see a few other things
Although
there.
supposedly it doubled the attendance in that wing.
In that wing, which...
The New Yorker said Sarah Berman was one of the women who changed the art world in 2017. So it was really incredible. This person that, and people from around the world and in every language was saying, who is this Sarah Berman, with this assumption that you're supposed to know who people are. So this person that was really an unlikely hero, and that had no great kind of, accomplishment in the traditional sense of, celebrity accomplishment, was being elevated to this level.
It also went to the National Museum of American Jewish History in Philadelphia. And there was, I read that there was thought that it might end up a permanent exhibit at the Met. Will that be happening?
No.
You're asking the wrong people.
Okay. I'll put in a
But
word.
it's going to continue touring, so...
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And
But you
perhaps
also
one day
created
it will.
a book. You made a book together. You collaborated together and created a book. Tell us about the sock, because this was one of the promotions and I think part of the invitation to the opening.
Yeah, this was the invitation to the opening, and the text. So, in keeping with the spirit of white and white things, and we like socks as much as anybody else does, and decided that we would put the text on the sock, and that would be the invitation to the opening. And the text, well, you can see they lived in a fancy shack, and the goose herder was blind. So this is text from the book of Sarah's life and where she came from in Belarus and the little village, and the trajectory of leaving in the 30s and being sick of the pogroms and coming to Israel, at that time Palestine, and then New York. Yes, and that's the little village where I went to visit with my family. We took a family trip there. So, and the stories always come around to the women. And the women are the heroes of all the stories. And we say in the book, the men were fine, but the women were wondrous. And I think that's true. The men weren't bad. Well,
Why-
some of them were.
So if you go back for 1 second, why was Pesach cut out of
Literally.
the photo? Because he was
Literally.
out of her life.
And you know what's interesting? She actually bothered to keep the photos after cutting his half out. I mean, you could say, I think I'm just going to get rid of these photos. So sometimes there's a hand, an errant hand holding her hand. It's really very extreme. And in her family, when they were mad at somebody, they would cut the eyes out of photos. I'm sure many of you do that. So our photo albums are very weird, with lots of eyes cut out and bodies cut out. So why did she cut him out? Because she had to cut him out. And it's a long and complicated story, but she needed to find her own life and her time.
When my parents got divorced, my grandmother was so furious at my father that she did the same thing. She cut my father out of every family photo. But she felt bad because she wanted me to still have some sort of historical artifact that included him. So she gave me all the cutouts of my father. So I have the photos without him and then the pieces of him.
Wow.
I thought you might enjoy that.
Do you have the pieces of him in a box or what? Or
I
in
have
an
the
envelope?
pieces of him in an envelope, but one particular piece where when they were married and he still looked really happy. I have that one in a frame.
That's amazing.
So yeah. So let's show some of the other photos from the book. So what was it like collaborating? You know, it's a very different relationship. You're suddenly artistic collaborators and not family, although there'll always be family. Did you ever disagree? Did you have different points of view about how things should work? How did you navigate that?
Badly. No.
Yeah.
It didn't work. No. Okay.
I always felt more comfortable with you as a collaborator than as a mother.
Nicely
No,
put.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm
You
joking.
said that so seriously. So dry.
See what you find out.
No, but it goes back to this notion that that's a fundamental part of how the relationship has always been from childhood, is that there wasn't a separation between parenting and collaboration. And, you know, Sarah Berman said that it's not that the child needs to earn the respect of the parent, it's that the parent needs to earn the respect of the child. And I think that Maira and Tibor did a really amazing job at that, which was that actually getting down at our level and playing and making. So making things was kind of more familiar to me than like discussing things, than how was your day, or why did you do that? It wasn't that we sat around the table and had to have a discussion and a report of things. We sat around the table and folded up paper and made books. So the collaboration and the essence of doing work as a fundamental part of your life is natural. So it didn't feel like you had to take a turn into, now we have to work together. How do we navigate that? It was just, here we are around the kitchen table still making things.
And so if you disagreed on a particular design or artistic direction, did you just sort of
Then
talk
Maira
it
was
out?
right.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
No, you know what? We never disagree. I don't mean that we didn't have different ideas, but we didn't disagree because I guess in some kind of magic, we happen to inhabit some kind of magical land where we both see things in a very similar way, and the conversations aren't like, oh, you idiot, how could you say something so stupid, which I've had with other people who I was married to, but so you survive that. But somehow this is a different, and you know, because I'm older, I could be older and wiser, that I see that we have this incredible dialogue. So it's just, it is natural. If it didn't feel natural, if we had to work at it, then something would be wrong and we'd have to go our separate ways.
Let's go to the next slide. Tell me about this one.
It was a very popular book. It was a very inspirational book.
I got this ahead of time and I was like, really?
One of his favorites, I hear.
And then I think the next is part of the exhibit.
It's him recording the audio version of the book. Right, so then the exhibit went to the National Museum of American Jewish History in Philadelphia, where they invited us to bring it into the museum, and the museum is on Independence Mall, which is the foundation of American independence and where the Declaration of Independence was signed and the Liberty Bell was signed. And I'm just saying that because it's new information to me, to both of us. So I'm letting you know that I know that now. But we said to the museum that we would love to do it with them, but we wanted to do it outside the museum as a monument to independence, in the sense that this represents Sarah's independence, and that there wasn't a monument to a woman on the mall. And after many conversations letting them know that we were really serious about that and weren't just saying it, they figured it out. So on the left is, it's a little hard to see, but it's the kind of the closet and a portion of the apartment that it was in, built on the mall. And then they said, we have now space inside the museum because you refused to do it in here, so do you want to expand the exhibition inside the museum? And we used the book as the backbone and kind of created an exhibition where you walked through the narrative.
Alex, let's talk about potatoes.
Mateos?
Potatoes.
Potatoes.
Next slide. Ta-da! Potatoes.
The world needs them.
So, Maira, these are sculptures.
That's
So
another collaboration. Alex sculpted and I painted. I cursed and painted. It's very hard to paint a potato. I don't know how good these are.
It's very easy to sculpt a potato.
So I got the easy. There were moments in the exhibition where we felt it needed something. We had a dream shack that was filled with feathers that represented this kind of dream state of Russian literature and the family stories and all of that. So you travel through this exhibit and you saw real artifacts and potatoes and Toscanini's pants, let's say, and then you were finished at the end, as one is, with a lemon ice pop, and which is the last. Alex had filmed her in Israel to her last days, not knowing that it was going to be her last days, and then when we were on the mall for July 4th, we were there outside and we were handing out Down with the Patriarchy lemon ice pops to anybody who wanted them. Down with the Patriarchy lemon ice pops. Isn't that great?
works for me. Maira, last year you published an illustrated version of the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas by Gertrude Stein. Now, I know you've created other illustrated versions of classic books. One of my favorites, one of my all-time favorites, is The Elements of Style by E.B. White. What made you decide to work on this particular book?
I had been talking to a publisher about illustrating another book, and it didn't work out. And then I was talking to, and my agent, Charlotte, the wonderful Charlotte Sheedy, said to me, well, you're nuts about this particular book, so illustrate that. And I said, righto. And that's how it started.
Now, Alex, you worked with Maira to make a film about Alice B. Toklas as well, which featured a bit of magic, which I'd love for you to talk about the making of the film, and then can you share it with us?
Certainly. Well, you really felt that to do this project justice, you had to inhabit Alice B. Toklas, and you felt a deep connection to her. Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, I felt a deep connection always. I've included them in so many books, in so many ways, children's books and adult books. I have this ridiculous connection to Gertrude and Alice.
She made an appearance in your 2003 children's book, Smarty Pants. After a classroom recitation, Mr. DeVecchi, the English teacher, tells his students, "You may think Gertrude Stein is crazy, insane, nuts, delirious, cuckoo, but I love her dearly." So you were saying.
So you wanted to become Alice, and you thought, okay, I'm going to become Alice, and I'm going to have my photo taken as Alice. So then that happened.
That's Maira Kalman as Alice B. Toklas.
And then once we realized that Maira had become Alice, we thought we should make a little documentary of Alice B. Toklas. So we made a little film, which we'll show you now. Wait, but before we turn it on,
Wait.
Maira has something to say to me.
They're whispering.
Yeah, I'll go back there and get it while the movie's playing. Okay.
Okay. Okay, we're ready for the movie.
The only indulgence I allow myself are artificial flowers on my hat. I find it so festive. And sometimes when I am lying in bed awake at night and I can't fall asleep, I say rutabaga, rutabaga, rutabaga over and over, and then I do fall asleep. I caught this Spanish mackerel off the coast of Mallorca, and it was really a tug of war. But, of course, as you can see, I won. It's beautiful, but rather inedible. So I just kept it as a little keepsake on my table, and once in a while we pet it. We were very, very happy in our life, and for us it was special, it was lovely, it was made to dance, and I really can't remember a better time than my life with the backup of Gertrude Stein. I wrote a little ditty about Gertrude Stein. Would you like to hear it? Good. I wrote this little ditty about Gertrude Stein. I was her lover and she was mine. It was a sultry day in Paris, the day we met. A coup de foudre I'll never forget. She might have called me her Babette, and yet, I was her pussy, and she was my lovey, lovey-dovey. To our salon came all the greats, Picasso, Matisse, Zara, Stravinsky, Rousseau, Cocteau, Hemingway, Nijinsky, and when they went home, we toddled off to bed and woke in the morning, suitably fed. I was her lover, and she was mine, the remarkable genius, Gertrude Stein. She was a writer and a genius. I was everything else. I cooked and sewed. I typed all of her manuscripts. I kept people away or let them into our salon as I saw fit. No! I cooked incessantly. I would love to teach you how to make my favorite recipes for sauce béarnaise, sauce bordelaise, sauce bolognaise, bouillabaisse, marseillaise, crème anglaise. And of course, my very famous recipe for hashish fudge, in which I would teach you how to pulverize in the mortar and really get a crispy, a crunchy, delightful, delicious treat if you can bear the évanouissement réveillé of the situation, if you know what I mean. There are so many other things that I would love to teach you. I could teach you a delightful mac and cheese or a grilled cheese or a cheese puff. Oh, puffs. Gertrude loved her puffs. Before I met Gertrude Stein, I led a pleasant life. I had many friends, much amusement, many interests. My life was reasonably full and I enjoyed it, but I was not very ardent in it. It took Picasso 90 sittings to paint Gertrude Stein's portrait. Nobody thought it looked like her, but he said, don't worry, it will. But actually, I don't know if he knew anything about what he was talking about. Oh, and you know Picasso. He was impossible. Thank you very much. Oh, this looks delicious. Absolutely delicious. Rien, je ne regrette rien. De rien, je ne regrette rien. Da, 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 da. Re.
When this first came out, the New York Times questioned whether this was an impersonation or an incarnation, and I loved that. What did people that were passing by in the street think of Alice B. Toklas?
Nothing. And the good thing about
You know,
living in New York
it's-
City is they're just used to anybody and everybody.
The composer Nico Muhly played the Gymnopédie Eric Satie piece that closes the film. He also worked with you on the opera for the Principles of Uncertainty.
And
So-
the elements of style.
And the elements of style. So there was this quite a long collaboration, and I understand that you first started working with him when he was a little boy.
It's child labor. We met in Rome. This really sounds. We met in Rome when he was 12, and we were all living there, and he was extraordinary. From the first minute you meet him, you know he's extraordinary. So we all became really like we're a family group. So as he got older, I was able to nab him for projects. I don't think I could get near him now. But, he's a little bit busy. But so we were able to collaborate on a bunch of things. It was really fantastic.
You then collaborated with another musician who you've done numerous collaborations with, the musician, the writer, the performer, David Byrne. One of your first collaborations was the children's book Stay Up Late, first published in 1987. You most recently collaborated with him on his extraordinary, life-affirming, heart-stopping Broadway show, American Utopia, where you created this curtain screen. Tell us about the way in which you created this. It's a very unusual curtain.
Well, first of all, the show, if any of you haven't seen it, it's on Broadway till March, and it really is one of the most extraordinary experiences you'll have, and especially coming out of what it's been like for the last few years, and the sense of hope, and not sappy, stupid hope, but smart, engaging, acerbic hope. You know, it's really quite amazing. So we've known each other for many years because M & Company did the graphics for the Talking Heads in the 80s. And so he called up and he said, do you want to do this curtain? So I said, yes. And that was that. We talked a bit about what it might be. and about the sense that the show is not cynical, and it's about looking at all and being curious about humanity and about all of the amazing things that go on in the world at the same time as all of the horrible things going on in the world. So it's something that I think that we share a sensibility of, that there's a sense of the absurd, and there's a sense of humor, and a sense of really loving things.
You and Alex then collaborated on the book for American Utopia, but it's not really for. It's sort of its own living, breathing object. It's quite a different experience than the show. The show is big and loud, and the book is a bit slower. It's sort of something that you want to savor, and it's a bit enchanting. What was the approach you took in making this book together?
Well, we thought it should be book size.
With pages.
Right, and we really, I mean, the intimacy, it's a good point that you're making, that taking something large, a big musical event, and turning it into an intimate, poetic, really a moment of poetry that you can take with you or look at whenever you like. So what did we do?
Well, all the artwork came from the curtain, and then we went through the text of the show and through the lyrics of the songs and pulled lines from the lyrics and kind of jumbled them together or unjumbled them and found a narrative and found some structure that felt like it was its own poem from a mix of different songs of his, and then paired those with images and created, I think of it kind of as a visual poem is what the book really is. So that was the process.
I feel very kind of weird and kind of icky a little bit talking about the next project because it feels very self-promoting, but I'm going to do it anyway because of what you did for this next project for me. So this is really about the work Alex did. It's not the work. Oh, this is some of the beautiful pages within.
We can skip these.
No. So just for a tiny bit of background, I have the great honor of working on this book with Alex. And it was something that Alex came to my rescue in doing. I worked on this book through COVID, and originally was supposed to do a big photo shoot with the guests that were going to be included, go all over the country, taking beautiful photographs with a wonderful photographer friend that I have, and that all sort of went by the wayside in March of 2020. My deadline didn't change, though. I originally hired a very dear friend of mine to work with me. Our friendship is intact, but the collaboration did not go well for him, and he quit. And I went crying to my agent, and Maira and I share the same glorious agent, Charlotte Cheedy, and she has known for years how much I admire and love Maira. And she said, well, Alex Kalman is doing a lot of book design now. Why don't you think about him? And I'm like, what? And she reached out to Alex to see if he would be interested in collaborating with me. And miraculously, he was available and said yes, and transformed this sort of heap of interviews into a work of art, an object d'art. And so, Alex, if you can talk a little bit about how you approached this and how you brought my work to life with your design and artwork.
Well, that is too kind.
No, it isn't.
Really, the pleasure was all mine, obviously, and to get a call from you saying, can you make a book with me? You have to be a real moron to say no. So, and I try not to be a real moron. It was challenging because we weren't in the same room and because the deadline was around the corner and we really had to kind of figure it out quickly. But I think the idea was to really, bring it to life with wit and a kind of a sense of boldness of the personalities, and to really respect each person that was in it and to really honor them and present them in a way that gave them each a moment. And that's what the focus was. And then it was just about getting to work and having a dialogue with you, and you being wonderful at saying this is absolutely fantastic or this is absolute crap. And
I don't
me
know
being
that I
able
ever
to,
used the word crap.
No, you didn't use the word crap. You said, I'm not so into this.
Right.
And kind of trying to be as responsive to that as possible. And I think we just kind of danced our way through it for the most part.
So one of the most important aspects of the book for me was the photography. And because I couldn't do my own photography with the photographer that I had originally thought I'd be working with, we commissioned photography. And Alex and I were both very specific about the kind of photography that we wanted to use. On the one hand, we needed a connective thread that would run through the entire book, even though it might be disparate photographers. And so we agreed we needed to see the soul of the person in their eyes in these photographs. But we also I really wanted Alex to sort of make them a little bit more original, something that people wouldn't expect to see, especially if they had seen the photos before. And so Alex made his magic happen. These are the end pages.
What's the text?
The text was quotes from the other, we couldn't include every interview I've ever done. It was really hard to choose. The book was a finite number of words, and so we then went through transcripts to find some of the most salient quotes from people that we could include, and Alex made all these squiggles. And
The more you said this person has to be in the book, the more we realized, okay, the end papers are going to have to be text-based.
And so Alison Bechdel is a marvelous graphic novelist. She wrote and created the comic Fun Home, and so Alex made her into a comic. Talk about this photograph. This is my favorite photograph in the book.
Well, this was taken by my granddaughter, who was two years old at the time. And it's my favorite photo. And I like that, to look into the soul of the eyes, there is no looking into anything. It's a big fuzz. But
you still see your soul, I think.
Right. Well, maybe even better, right? Because it's not looking, because I'm not nervous. And so...
So there were so many things about this photo that we loved. If you notice in the photograph, there's a little scribble. And that became the sort of muse for the whole book. There's something really beautiful about a squiggle. The squiggle on the cover is actually a closed scribble, which I felt really represented what the best kind of conversation is, endless. And so that scribble became a recurring theme throughout the whole book. You can just go through them if you'd like. Nico Mooley, who we just talked about. Dear friend of all of ours, Maria Popova. And you were going to say something?
No.
Oh, the next project. Now we'll move on to more work by Maira and Alex. The last two collaborations I want to talk to you about are two other projects that you both conceived and created during COVID. The first is Trees. It's a booklet you made as a fundraiser, and you raised a lot of money that was donated to organizations working to bring out the vote. So tell us a little bit more. I have a copy here of the original booklet, which also came with a special little prize, a piece of a little tree.
A piece of a cloven bark. And it had to specifically be from a cloven tree, a bark from a cloven tree, because we were reading The Tempest, and as you all know, a cloven tree was really important in The Tempest.
As we all know.
As you all know very well. And so, at any rate, we were sequestered together upstate with Alex's wife, and we were spending a lot of time looking at trees. So I started painting trees, and then we were also confronting all of the Mishigas of the world. And so Alex, I think it was you that said we could do something.
Yeah, I think that we were completely terrified, like everybody, and in that moment tried to turn to work as some way of grounding oneself in the moment and having some sort of purpose. And then the idea of thinking, okay, if everybody's kind of isolated in this moment, maybe receiving something that is warm and special from an artist they like, if they like Maira's work, and it arriving in the mail and it not coming through an institution or through a publishing house, but really this idea where we are making these things and then we are mailing them and they are arriving in your mailbox, that kind of connection to Maira's community would be a nice thing to do. And that perhaps in doing that, people would receive something that they love and is meaningful to them in this moment. We would have something to focus our minds on, and we could raise money to support organizations that we thought were doing really critical work in those times. So the first book was to movement.org.
You raised
getting
over
out the vote.
$100,000.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Who says art can't change the world?
But you know, it's interesting because I don't like politics and I don't like any kind of engagement that's literally head on. I would rather be oblique and do my work and then let it speak for itself. So this was an unusual situation, but we were surprised. Anyway, the book was called Trees, appropriately enough. And then we decided to do another one to raise money for organizations working against hunger, mostly in this country. And we were talking about what the ideas might be, and then Alex, we were talking about women, and I was doing a lot of paintings of women, and Alex said, well, what about women holding things? There was something about that specifically, because I was doing a lot of paintings of women holding things. So the book is called Women Holding Things. And it's metaphorical and literal also. It's women holding their own, or women holding a grudge, or women holding a chicken, or a petite pink cup. So the range of what women hold in this world, which
Holding
goes
their
back
shit
to
together.
the... Yeah, holding, really, that's true. I didn't do that. We don't have that as maybe I should add that. Because it's from the pamphlet, it's going to be a real book that's coming out next year.
So that was because Alex said, oh, we have some news about this project. So the big announcement is you have a book about this coming out.
So it's expanded from the pamphlet into a real book with a real publisher.
Wonderful.
And it'll come out next fall. So it was, that was, and it came, the first book came with a piece of cloven bark, and this one came with a balloon that said, hold on, which was the last phrase of the book, when after you're dealing with despair and sorrow and troubles, which is everybody's lot some of the time, then you could just say, but hold on.
Well, I can't wait to see the book. I'd love to talk to you again when the book comes out. We can maybe talk about the making of. I want to close the show with something that I don't know that the audience knows. Monday is your birthday. Monday is your birthday, Maira Kalman. And, you know, you wrote a whole book about cake that is beloved around the world. But I was thinking, cake might be hard during COVID. And so I got donuts. And so I wanted to invite the audience. Well, we have two here for Maira and Alex, and we have some leftovers, which I'm going to ask if we can pass out.
I hope there are enough for everybody.
There aren't enough for everybody, but I don't know that everybody wants to eat that much
sweet.
sugar. But what I really want everybody to do is join me in singing my favorite song of all time. Such a happy song.
Everybody's favorite song, right?
Everybody's favorite song. So I'm going to do a 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to sing. And if you're at home, please join. We'll know if you're not. I want to sing happy birthday to one of my all-time heroes, Maira Kalman. 1 and a 2 and a 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Myra. Happy birthday to you, and many more.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
They didn't let us have candles on the stage. They said we couldn't light any fires.
Ah, that's funny.
But we also thought, blowing might not be the best idea right now. But Myra.
Thank you, Debbie. That's really sweet.
Thank you for making the world better with your work. Alex, thank you for saving my world with your work and doing such a beautiful job in making things together and apart. Really, really, truly. Thank you all for being here. And
thank you, Debbie.
Thank you
for joining
Debbie.
us tonight.